If you're old and having sex, these 7 truths can affect your health, relationships, and longevity. Most doctors will never bring this up at your annual checkup. They'll check your blood pressure, review your medications, maybe ask about your sleep, but they will almost never ask about your intimate life. And that silence is costing older adults their health, their relationships, and in some cases, years of their lives. If you are over 60 and still having sex or wishing you were, what happens in your bedroom is not separate from your health. It is directly connected to how long you live, how sharp your mind stays, how strong your heart remains, and whether the relationship you've built over decades survives the changes that age quietly brings. What you are about to hear is not what most people your age are talking about, but it is exactly what they need to hear. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, something is going to shift for you. Truth 1. Sex after 60 is not just pleasure. It is medicine. Here is something the wellness industry spends billions of dollars trying to sell you in pill form, and your own body can produce it for free. Regular sexual activity in older adults is not a luxury or a lifestyle choice. It is a clinically documented health intervention, and the research supporting this is not obscure. It is consistent, peer-reviewed, and largely ignored in the conversations older adults are actually having with their doctors. When you engage in sexual intimacy, your brain releases a cascade of hormones, oxytocin, dopamine, and endorphins, that do measurable work inside your body. Oxytocin alone reduces cortisol, the stress hormone that, when chronically elevated, accelerates cellular aging, weakens immune response, and increases inflammation throughout the body. Inflammation, as most people over 60 have heard by now, is the silent driver behind heart disease, cognitive decline, and arthritis. Intimacy is one of the most natural anti-inflammatory experiences available to you, and it costs nothing. A landmark study published in the New England Journal of Medicine followed adults between the ages of 57 and 85, and found that 73% of those between 57 and 64 remained sexually active. More importantly, those who maintained an active, intimate life consistently reported higher life satisfaction, stronger emotional resilience, and better self-rated health than those who did not. These were not young people. These were people in your age group, living fuller lives, partly because of a dimension of health they refused to abandon. The cardiovascular benefits alone deserve attention. Sexual activity raises heart rate, improves circulation, and engages muscle groups in ways that mirror moderate aerobic exercise. For older adults whose mobility may limit traditional workouts, this is not a small thing. A study from Queen's University Belfast found that men who were sexually active 3 or more times per week had a significantly reduced risk of heart attack and stroke. The mechanism is straightforward. The heart is a muscle, and regular, gentle elevation of heart rate keeps it conditioned. There is also the matter of sleep. Older adults frequently struggle with sleep quality, and poor sleep is one of the most well-documented accelerators of physical and cognitive aging. The hormone prolactin, released after sexual climax, promotes deep, restorative sleep in a way that most sleep aids cannot replicate without side effects. If you have been chasing better sleep through supplements and bedtime routines, this particular truth may reframe the entire conversation. Consider the story of a 67-year-old man whose physician was genuinely puzzled by his unusually low blood pressure and inflammation markers during a routine checkup. He was not on a special diet. he was not doing intense exercise. When the doctor finally asked more detailed lifestyle questions, the answer was surprisingly simple. He and his wife of 38 years had maintained a warm, consistent, intimate life, and neither of them had ever thought of it as a health strategy. They thought of it as love. It turns out those two things are not as different as we assume. Have you ever heard your doctor describe intimacy as part of your health plan? Drop a yes or no in the comments. The answers might surprise you, and they will definitely tell us something important. Truth 2. Your body has changed. That is not a failure. One of the most quietly damaging beliefs older adults carry into their 60s and 70s is this: if sex feels different than it used to, something has gone wrong. That belief leads to avoidance. Avoidance leads to silence. And silence, as you will hear throughout this video, is the real enemy, not age and not your body. The hormonal landscape of the human body shifts significantly after 60. In women, declining estrogen following menopause brings changes that are both common and frequently untreated. Vaginal atrophy, a condition involving thinning, drying, and reduced elasticity of vaginal tissue, affects nearly 50% of postmenopausal women. It can make physical intimacy uncomfortable or even painful. Yet research consistently shows that fewer than 25% of women experiencing this condition ever discuss it with their doctor. The reason is almost always the same: embarrassment, or the assumption that discomfort is simply what aging feels like and must be endured. It does not have to be endured. There are safe, well-established treatments, from topical estrogen therapies to non-hormonal moisturizers and lubricants, that gynecologists and general practitioners can prescribe or recommend. The barrier is not medical. It is conversational. Women are not bringing it up, and doctors are not asking. For men over 60, declining testosterone creates a different but equally real set of changes. Libido may reduce. Erections may take longer to develop and may require more direct stimulation than they did at 40. Emotional sensitivity during intimacy may increase. These are not signs of dysfunction. They are signs of a body operating under a different hormonal profile. The problem arises when men interpret these changes as personal failure rather than physiological transition, withdraw from intimacy entirely, and never tell their partner why. Partners on both sides of this dynamic often experience the withdrawal as rejection. A woman whose husband has quietly pulled away due to performance anxiety may spend months assuming she is no longer attractive to him. A man whose wife avoids intimacy due to physical discomfort may spend months assuming she has lost interest in him. Both are suffering in silence in the same house over problems that are medically solvable and relationally healable, if only someone starts the conversation. A 63-year-old woman spent 2 years avoiding any physical intimacy with her husband after menopause made it consistently uncomfortable. She said nothing. She assumed this was simply her new reality. It was a single appointment with a new gynecologist, one who specifically asked about intimate health, that changed the trajectory of her marriage. Within 3 months of beginning a prescribed topical treatment, she described the change not just physically but emotionally, as if a wall she had quietly built around herself had come down. Your body has not failed you. It has changed. And change, when you understand it, is something you can work with. Has your body changed in ways that surprised you after 60? You are not alone. Share your experience in the comments. Your words could be exactly what someone else needs to read today. Truth 3. STIs do not retire when you do. This truth is uncomfortable. It is also urgent. And the discomfort people feel about it is precisely why it causes so much preventable harm in the senior population every single year. Sexually transmitted infection rates among adults over 55 have risen dramatically over the past decade. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have tracked consistent year-over-year increases in diagnoses of chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis and herpes among older adults, a population that public health messaging has largely ignored in favor of focusing on teenagers and young adults. The assumption built into that messaging is the same one built into most cultural narratives about older adults, that sex is not really happening, so risk is not really present. That assumption is wrong, and it is dangerous. Several factors explain the increase. The widespread availability of medications for erectile dysfunction brought many older men back to sexual activity after years of absence, sometimes in new relationships following divorce or widowhood, sometimes without updated knowledge about protection. The social landscape for adults over 60 has shifted significantly, with online dating platforms now heavily used by seniors, creating more new sexual partnerships than previous generations experienced at this life stage. And critically, older immune systems are less equipped to quickly neutralize infections that a younger body might suppress with fewer consequences. There is also the issue of testing. Older adults are rarely offered STI screenings during routine medical visits unless they specifically request them. Many do not request them, either because they do not perceive themselves as being at risk, or because the conversation feels too awkward to initiate. The result is that infections go undetected longer, cause more damage, and are more likely to be transmitted to partners who are equally unaware. HIV deserves specific attention here. While HIV is now a manageable chronic condition with modern antiretroviral therapy, older adults are diagnosed at later stages on average than younger patients, meaning more damage has already occurred before treatment begins. A 70-year-old woman who re-entered the dating world after the death of her husband of 45 years had no framework for thinking about this risk. She had never had to. One relationship, one unprotected encounter with a partner who was himself unaware of his status, led to a diagnosis that arrived only because her doctor, unusually, ordered a comprehensive screening panel. Early detection gave her access to treatment that has kept her healthy and active for the 8 years since. But she will tell anyone who listens. She wishes someone had told her this truth before she needed to live it. Protection does not expire. Conversations about sexual health do not have an age limit. And requesting an STI screening from your doctor is not an admission of anything. It is an act of self-respect and care for the people you love. The next truth may be the one that changes how you see your relationship entirely, because it reveals what actually holds intimacy together after 60. And it is not what most people expect. Truth 4. Emotional intimacy becomes the foundation, not the bonus. Ask most people in their 30s what makes a satisfying intimate life, and the answers will center heavily on the physical. Ask someone in their late 60s or 70s who is genuinely thriving in their relationship, and the answer almost always sounds different. Something has shifted. The physical is still present and still valued, but it is no longer carrying the relationship alone. Something deeper is doing the heavy lifting, and that something is emotional intimacy. Research from the University of Michigan's National Poll on Healthy Aging found that emotional closeness was the single strongest predictor of relationship satisfaction among adults over 65. More predictive than physical frequency, physical health status, or even relationship length. Couples who reported feeling genuinely seen, heard, and emotionally safe with their partner consistently rated their intimate lives as more satisfying than couples with more frequent physical contact but less emotional depth. This finding has enormous practical implications. It means that the couples who are most likely to maintain a rich, connected, intimate life into their 70s and 80s are not necessarily the ones with the fewest physical limitations. They are the ones who have invested most deeply in knowing each other, in talking honestly, in creating the emotional conditions under which vulnerability feels safe rather than threatening. And yet, emotional intimacy is the dimension of relationship health that most couples have done the least deliberate work on. Many long-term couples have spent decades operating in parallel, raising children, managing finances, navigating careers, without ever developing a language for their inner emotional lives. When the children leave, when the career ends, when the body begins to change, that unspoken gap suddenly becomes very loud. Couples therapists who work specifically with older adults consistently report the same pattern. It is not physical limitation that ends intimacy in long-term relationships after 60. It is emotional disconnection that was present long before 60 but was masked by the noise of a busy life. When the noise quiets, the disconnection becomes impossible to ignore. A couple married for 42 years nearly separated at age 68. Not because of infidelity, not because of physical incapacity, because they had spent 4 decades being excellent partners in logistics and almost complete strangers in emotional depth. The husband described it as living with someone you care about very much, but never quite reach. One session with the couple's therapist, in which both of them were asked simply to describe what they needed from the other person. Not what they wanted to change, just what they needed, opened a door that neither had known how to find. They described the following 3 years as the most intimate of their marriage. Do you think emotional connection matters more than physical intimacy after 60? There is no wrong answer. Tell us what you think in the comments. Truth 5. Your medications are quietly affecting your sex life. This is the truth most couples argue about for years without ever identifying the real cause. One partner's interest has changed. The other partner takes it personally. Distance grows, resentment builds, and the actual explanation is sitting in a prescription bottle on the nightstand. The majority of adults over 60 take at least 1 prescription medication. Many take 5 or more. What most patients are never clearly told, and what most physicians do not routinely discuss, is that a significant number of the most commonly prescribed medications for older adults have direct, documented effects on libido, arousal, emotional availability, and physical response during intimacy. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, commonly prescribed for depression and anxiety, are among the most well-known libido suppressants. They can reduce sexual desire, delay or prevent climax, and create a generalized emotional flatness that makes intimacy feel less meaningful even when the desire to connect is genuinely present. Beta blockers, prescribed widely for blood pressure and heart conditions, can reduce sexual response in both men and women. Antihistamines reduce natural lubrication in women. Certain antihypertensives affect erectile function in men. Diuretics can cause fatigue and reduce sensitivity. The list is long, and it overlaps significantly with the standard medication profile of a healthy, well-managed 65-year-old. The critical point is this: in most cases, alternatives exist, a different medication in the same class, a dosage adjustment, a complementary intervention. A prescribing physician or pharmacist who is informed that intimate quality of life matters to you can often find a path that does not require choosing between your cardiovascular health and your relationship. But that conversation requires you to initiate it. And most people do not, because the subject feels too personal, too embarrassing, or too trivial to raise with a medical professional. It is none of those things. Sexual health is health. Bringing it to your doctor is not oversharing. It is advocating for yourself completely. A 66-year-old man had spent almost 2 years assuming that his declining interest in his wife of 30 years was simply what aging felt like. He did not mention it to anyone. His wife interpreted it as a loss of attraction and quietly began grieving the relationship she thought she was losing. It was a pharmacist, conducting a routine medication review, who identified 2 of his 5 prescriptions as likely contributors to his experience. 1 dosage adjustment and 1 medication swap, both approved by his physician, produced changes he described as genuinely unexpected within 90 days. His wife described it as getting her husband back. Your medications may be doing exactly what they are supposed to do for your heart, your mood, and your blood pressure, and also doing something to your intimate life that nobody thought to warn you about. Ask the question. It may change everything. Truth number 6 connects your intimate life directly to how long you will actually live. And the science behind it is more specific than most people realize. Stay with me. Truth 6. Frequency and longevity are directly linked. Here is the science. If you needed one more reason to take your intimate life seriously as a dimension of health, not just as a personal or relational matter, this is it. Multiple independent peer-reviewed studies conducted across different populations and spanning multiple decades have now established a measurable, statistically significant link between sexual activity in older adults and longer lifespan. The pathways are multiple and cumulative. The cardiovascular benefit has already been discussed, but the cognitive dimension deserves its own attention. Sexual activity stimulates the brain through multiple channels simultaneously. Neurochemical release, physical sensation, emotional engagement, novelty, and focused present-moment awareness. Research published in the journals of gerontology found that older adults who remained sexually active scored significantly higher on tests of memory and executive function compared to those who were not. The stimulation appears to support neural connectivity in regions of the brain associated with memory formation and emotional regulation, the same regions most vulnerable to age-related decline. The immune system benefit is equally documented. Regular intimacy has been associated with higher levels of immunoglobulin A, an antibody that serves as one of the body's first lines of defense against infection. In a population, older adults, whose immune function is already naturally declining, this is a meaningful contribution to resilience and recovery. A Duke University longitudinal study that tracked adults over 60 for more than 2 decades found that enjoyment of sex, not just frequency, but genuine satisfaction, was a significant predictor of longevity, specifically in women. It was one of the few lifestyle variables that consistently predicted longer life independent of physical health status at the start of the study. For men, a separate study found that those who reported regular sexual activity over a 10-year observation period had a 50% lower mortality risk than those who were sexually inactive. 50% is not a marginal finding. It is the kind of number that belongs in every conversation about healthy aging. The mental health contribution may be the most direct longevity pathway of all. Chronic depression is one of the most significant risk factors for early mortality in older adults. It weakens immune function, disrupts sleep, reduces motivation to maintain healthy behaviors, and increases physiological stress on virtually every organ system. Sexual intimacy, through the hormonal, neurochemical and relational benefits it provides, is one of the most effective natural interventions against depression available to older adults. Not a replacement for professional treatment when needed, but a genuinely powerful complementary factor. Consider the story of two brothers, both 72, both in similar physical health at the start of a decade. One remained in an active, emotionally connected relationship. The other lost his wife and made no new intimate connections over the following years. By the time both men were 80, the differences in their cognitive sharpness, physical vitality, immune resilience, and emotional stability were striking and measurable in their medical records. Their genetics were nearly identical. Their intimate lives were not. Does this connection between intimacy and longevity surprise you, or did some part of you already sense it? Tell us in the comments. This conversation matters. Truth 7. The conversation you have been avoiding is the one that could save everything. Every truth in this video points toward the same place. The medications that are quietly affecting your relationship, solvable with a conversation. The physical changes that are causing avoidance and shame, addressable with a conversation. The emotional disconnection that has been growing for years, healed by a conversation. The STI risk that most seniors do not know they carry, prevented by a conversation. The longevity benefits of intimacy that most doctors never mention, unlocked by a conversation. The single most powerful thing you can do for your sexual health, your relationship, and your longevity right now is to begin, or restart, an honest, open conversation. With your partner, with your doctor, with yourself. Research shows that 68% of adults over 60 have never had a direct conversation with their physician about sexual health. Yet 80% of that same group say they wish their doctor would bring it up. That gap between what people need and what they are actually receiving is not a medical failure. It is a conversational one. And unlike a diagnosis or a prescription, a conversation is something you can initiate today. With a partner, the most effective conversations are not built on complaints or comparisons to how things used to be. They are built on curiosity and honesty. 3 specific conversation starters that relationship therapists have validated for couples over 60 are these. I want to understand what feels good for you now, not 5 years ago. Can we talk about that? And there's something I've wanted to tell you about what I need that I haven't found the words for yet. Can I try? And I've noticed we've been distant, and I don't want to pretend that's okay. Can we figure out what's changed together? None of these require perfect timing or perfect words. They require only the decision to stop waiting for the other person to start. A 71-year-old woman had been silent about her intimate needs for so long that she had nearly convinced herself they did not exist anymore. She did not raise the subject aloud. Instead, she wrote her husband of 30 years a letter. Not a complaint, not an ultimatum. A letter describing, as honestly as she had ever been with anyone, what she had been feeling, what she had been missing, and what she hoped was still possible between them. He read it twice, came to find her in the kitchen, sat down, and said 4 words. I needed this, too. The letter she had delayed writing for 3 years became the foundation of what both of them described as the richest, most honest season of their entire marriage. Age is not the enemy of intimacy. Silence is. The men and women living the longest, most connected, most fully realized lives after 60 are not the ones who got lucky with biology. They are the ones who chose honesty over embarrassment, vulnerability over pride, and conversation over comfortable silence. Every single time. Everything you heard today points to one undeniable truth. Your intimate life after 60 is not a footnote to the rest of your health. It is woven through all of it. Your heart, your mind, your immune system, your emotional resilience, and the relationships that give your days meaning. The people who thrive in this season of life are not the ones who surrender intimacy to the assumptions of aging. They are the ones who fight for it quietly, wisely, and honestly, with their partners, with their doctors, and with themselves. You now have knowledge that most people your age do not have. The question is simply what you choose to do with it. One conversation, one appointment, one honest moment, that is all transformation ever requires to begin. If this video opened something in you today, a thought you had been avoiding, a conversation you have been delaying, a truth you recognized in your own life, then it did exactly what it was made to do. You deserve honest, accurate information about every dimension of your health. And that includes this one. Do one thing right now. Share this video with someone over 60 who needs to hear it. Not because it is uncomfortable, but because it could genuinely change the quality and length of their life. If this kind of real research-backed content speaks to you, hit the subscribe button so you never miss a video made specifically for this season of your life. And if you found value here today, the like button is the simplest way to tell us it mattered. We read every comment and we build every video around what you actually need. So tell us below. Which truth hit closest to home for you? We want to know. And before you go, watch this next video right here. Because what your body is quietly signaling after 60 is something every older adult needs to understand before it becomes something harder to reverse. We will see you there.